Boston area real estate is signaling weakness as one of the last straws to indicate a national housing market downturn. So far, the bulk of the country has already showed a massive sales decline, with price reductions finally hitting sellers hard as home buyers have finally tapped out from their exuberance and FOMO. And for those that don't understand the acronym FOMO, it's fear of missing out. In this video, I'm interviewing Boston real estate expert Mike Urban. You're about to hear the truth from Mike on what's really going on, not the cheerleading that most real estate agents and mortgage professionals tend to tout. And also, we're going to talk about how a local real estate company just canceled a large development plan in Boston due to the changing economic landscape. I hope you enjoy the show. Hey, Mike, thanks so much for joining us today. Tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
Thank you. First of all, thanks for having me. Appreciate the opportunity. I've been in real estate for the last 7 years. Realtor here in the Boston area. I also have a real estate license and team in Pennsylvania as well. But that's it. Been doing this for 7 years. 10 years prior to that, I was an electrical contractor and just kind of fell into transition from one profession to the other.
Well, we're excited to have you. And man, we want to dive into the Boston area because I have to tell you, man, so many people comment, we've been covering various states and talking about just real estate in general, that now it's really starting to show up everywhere. The big decline that a lot of people, mainstream media, and a lot of our audience and commenters had said would never happen. And Mike, the interesting thing to know, man, is that we have so many comments from people that are saying, not in my neighborhood, not in Boston, not in Massachusetts. We are kind of above all others, if you will, and not seeing any kind of indication of a housing market crash. But we know that that's not the case here, and we're excited to have you so that we're going to hear the real story. But I want to start us off here, Mike, because in a recent article in the Boston Globe, I'm sure you've heard of that, there's a story that touches a lot of the hearts of those who actually have read it. And it's a story about the once achievable dream of home ownership. They're talking about the Boston and Massachusetts market. And lately, Massachusetts is popular for being almost impossible for most Americans to buy a home. It seems to be changing a little, like I said. And in this article dated October 25th, it says, one house, one family, and the fading dream of home ownership. And it says in here, Mike, that the typical home in Massachusetts once sold for 3 times the median household income, a reach but manageable. Today, it sells for 8 times the median household income. The age of the median first-time home buyer, we know, has climbed nationwide from 29 in 1981 to 36 in 2022. But, kind of tell us what's going on in Boston?
So to afford a, let's say, single family home in the greater Boston area, you have to have a income of over $210,000. That's what it is. And the funny thing is, if you look at what the median income is for a family here, it's around $120,000. So the affordability is very, very difficult here. And I'm not sure if it's going to get better anytime soon, but the reality is we saw a lot of increases throughout COVID, as every market did. And Boston's trajectory is always going up. But again, as we said earlier in the podcast, there are some cracks in that foundation, in my opinion. And there are some neighborhoods out there that are seeing some declines and stuff like that. But as a total, Boston is very, very hard to afford a home.
Well, tell us what's happening, because I know, and you run a YouTube channel also. I'll drop the link in the show notes to your channel. But you've been talking about how prices are coming down. Can you kind of tell us about that?
Sure. So there are some neighborhoods that got hyperinflated, as many parts of the country, especially around major cities, right? There's a lot of neighborhoods that became hyperinflated during the pandemic. And now what we're starting to see is, even though there's not a ton of inventory on the market in some of these areas, they are trending downwards. At least the last few months have been trending downwards. And if you look at the graphs between, let's say, Q3 to Q4 in 2022 versus Q3 to Q4 now in 2023, it seems like there is more of a decline. And again, it's very neighborhood specific. Certain neighborhoods are going to perform better than others, just like almost anywhere in the country, right? But there are some neighborhoods here that are not performing that well. And it's surprising to see.
Are they higher price communities to start with? Is that what it is? I mean, are the prices, that you're seeing, is it really the higher price category, or is it in areas that have higher crime?
I would say higher priced areas, better school district areas, stuff like that. Obviously areas that have a lot of crime, just, statistically, it is what it is. You're going to see some declines. If other markets that have less crime are performing bad, then that'll translate into other markets as well. But overall, it's higher price point markets. It's higher price point markets for sure. I think people are scared of interest rates.
What do you think is one of the reasons why your real estate has been so high? I mean, you're talking about people needing household median income over $200,000 to buy. I mean, why is it? Is it because you're not seeing the development of new housing? What are those areas? What do they look like? I mean, are there any new communities?
There's never new communities here. There is one coming up over the next couple of years. I believe it's called Dorchester Center, but that is just got approved. That's way off from being developed, and that's going to have a number of condos that come on the market. But as for communities, we don't have much land here in Eastern Massachusetts. Even in the greater Boston area, there's not a lot of land to build, which is part of the problem, right? There's less inventory here than obviously Western Mass, but it's tough. There's tight inventory. Some markets have inventory, and I just feel like a lot of buyers are on the sidelines waiting to see what's going to happen. The funny thing is, though, if you look at the charts for how many transactions have been cash, the cash transaction number has been incrementally going up. So people are still spending cash here, I think, in hopes that they're making a good financial investment, in my opinion.
I can understand. I mean, I think that if anyone has cash, why would they pay 8% for a 30-year fixed rate mortgage? I mean,
Sure.
It's crazy, right? So I think we are seeing cash showing up for those that can afford it. When you're talking, I'd like to get back to the development. I mean, obviously in Boston, you do have areas that could be developed.
There are areas, and there have been some more high rises built and stuff like that over the years. There was like 3 or 4 new high rises over the last 2 years that were built. A lot of those sold out. Raffles was one of them. They sold out. They didn't even put them on the market, and they pretty much sold out instantly. But there's still some buildings that have been sitting through COVID that have a lot of inventory available as well. And whether or not we're going to see any more big high rises other than what's going to happen in Dorchester Center, that's probably it. Now, as for the greater Boston area, developments where communities with a lot of land and there's a lot of single family homes, there's just not that much. There's just not that much available around here.
Do you think it's just because of regulation not letting them
That's part
build?
of it.
Yeah,
that's part of it. So they need to, what they need to do is ease up on a lot of the regulations. That's part of the problem. They, over the last, I think, 5 years, have been slowly easing up on a couple of things. But the weird thing is certain towns are much easier to build and develop in or redevelop than others. And it's very hard. It's very strict. And I believe it's very political as well.
I want to bring your attention also, and maybe you've seen this, maybe you haven't, but there's an article on WGBH.org, and we'll kind of dive into a little bit, but it's crazy because your regulators are proposing, and you may have already heard about this, but they're proposing a sort of like a brand new tax, if you will. I mean, they're debating it now. Well, first, let's look. It's mayor's pitch. New real estate tax is another tool against the crisis. Now, I mean, they're talking about the housing market crisis. They're talking about Massachusetts. And here it's specifically talking about the Boston market. And, so anyway, we'll dive in a little bit. In Cambridge, where median rents top 3,400 for a 2-bedroom, residents regularly name affordable housing as their top concerns on an annual survey. Amherst rental market is strained by a growing number of college students living off campus. A family hoping to buy a house in Concord would need to have an annual income of $300,000 to afford the median list price of $1.5 million. And you had mentioned that as well. But the tax proposals vary by community. Now, Mike, what we're looking at here is that, and this is one of the things that I think is a big problem, because if we go after World War II, right, we had a housing crisis back then. We had an affordability crisis, and not a lot of people, I mean, home ownership was low. And in fact, we're starting to see a lot of the home ownership dropping down to very low levels because people just can't afford to buy. And, as we just talked about, from 1981 till now, the median age of a home buyer, first-time buyer, has risen substantially. And, a lot of that is, I think, it's going to get worse, and it's because of affordability. But back after World War II, the government came in and incentivized developers and home builders to build affordable housing. In fact, that's a lot of the older cities and neighborhoods. We could see still evidence of that, where a lot of the houses looked the same. They were 3-bedroom, 1-bath homes, small lots, but very affordable, good, safe, sound, housing, security for the people that were living in it. They would no longer had to rent. They could own a house for a longer period of time, raise their families, things like that, settle in, and really make the community theirs, have a great positive impact in the community. Since then, we've gone to McMansions, and the reason has been because of regulation, not because of the builders necessarily wanting to build big houses, but it costs so much money and takes so much time for the land development process, and that it burdens these developers and homeowners, that they're like, well, if I'm going to build a house, I can't build a 1,600 square foot house or less. I really need to build a 2,500 square foot house or more in order for the profit to be enough. And I think now we've come to a crossroad where that's not going to work anymore. But I want to talk about the tax proposal and get your opinion on it. So this article in WGBH says the tax proposals vary by community. Under Boston's home rule petition, property sales for $2 million or less would be exempt. Above that threshold, the city would apply a 2% fee on the portion of the price over $2 million. Mayor Michelle Wu said that in 2021, the fee would have generated up to $100 million in revenue for housing affordability and production efforts. She says that in the last year, it would have applied to 700 transactions out of more than 10,000 property sales. Revenues raised through this fee would help us build supportive housing and ensure that our seniors can stay in their homes, and it would build new homes for families who've been forced out by skyrocketing prices and make it possible for more first-time home buyers to put down roots and raise their families here in Boston. Have you seen this article, or what's your opinion?
Yeah, I've seen it. The reality is anytime you impose a transfer tax on top of what they're already paying. So right now in Massachusetts, it's actually a little strange. I know a lot of other parts of the country, transfer taxes are normally split between the buyer and the seller. And in Massachusetts, actually, the seller pays all of the transfer taxes. Okay. So when that buyer goes to sell the home that they bought, whether it be 7 or 10 years, then they have to pay all the transfer taxes. Okay. So what they're imposing is a 2% transfer tax on any transaction that's $2 million or higher. And the reality is, number one question I have is, who's paying for that? Is it split equally between the buyer and the seller? Is that imposed directly on the seller? we're at a point now in the market where our commissions are being questioned, and to have a buyer have to pay another 1% on a $2 million plus purchase. Well, yes, they have to have some money in order to afford a $2 million plus house. A $2 million house in the city is not that luxury. That's not a luxury home. Okay. Unless it's something that's 600 square feet, right? So the reality is, I don't know if it's a good idea. I think affordable housing in general is a good idea to bring more people into the area, to create more opportunities, but I'm not sure about the way that they're proposing it, to be honest with you.
Well, I mean, do you think it's a good idea for the government to be involved in taxing more? What percentage of that would actually show up, or how much would they have to have by the time they hired more people, put their more controls on things, had the money grabs of then the developers coming in to turn these properties into actual affordable housing communities. There would be so much more red tape. Don't you think it would be best for the government just to step aside, put an emergency action in place, right? Not just in Boston, but some type of an emergency action in place that says we are going to cut red tape, open up more of this land for building affordable housing, and we're going to do it right now.
That's what needs to be done, in my opinion. Affordable housing is great. I mean, if it brings more people in, that's great. But then when you get the government involved, there's a lot of dominoes that have to fall, and there's a lot of people on the back end that have to get paid, right? The builders, all of that stuff comes into play, and it's very easy for people to spend money frivolously. And this, anytime there's higher taxes, especially on real estate transactions, money going from point A to point B. I feel like it's very vague on what they're proposing, as you could see in the article. I mean, they don't even know who's actually going to pay that tax based on the article. I think less government involvement would be good, and I think more regulations being lifted would be the best course of action, and they need to do that today. A good example for this is there's a lot of redevelopment in Cambridge, in the Somerville area, obviously Cambridge because you have all of the universities. And just from a project of, let's say you were to buy a single family home and you want to convert that, a big single family, convert it into condos. I mean, if somebody closed on that today, you're talking a year and a half before those are put on the market. In other parts of the country, because obviously I sell in Pennsylvania too, 3 months, 4 months, you could buy a single family home, flip it, do your renovations, X, Y, and Z, put it on the market. I mean, it could be a done deal within 4 to 5 months. And that's on a purchased, renovated, closed, off to a new buyer here, year and a half at the very least.
What do you think of Mayor Wu? Do you like her?
Like anything else, there's certain things that I like, and then there's obviously going to be things that I don't like. I think that
what do you like?
I think that she definitely advocates for lower income, trying to build up affordability and stuff like that. I think the intentions are there, but I don't know if the way that she's handling it or what she's proposing is the best option, in my opinion. I think that she needs to consult with more people that are in the field and get their opinions, a variety of opinions, to come up with a course of action.
Well, I think that she definitely knows how to propose tax hikes and tax increases. And I think this 2% fee, I question how it will be applied and how much of the percentage. It's amazing because you look at a lot of nonprofits, right? And people say, hey, I feel really good about donating to this nonprofit. But then they realize that only 17 cents of the dollar actually goes to the nonprofit. So one, I would be very curious as to see the plan for the per dollar, collected, like what will be the cost, the government costs of this program, and what percentage would actually go. But you noticed, you said a couple things, and I want to kind of dive in. But you were talking about universities, and the development around universities and things like that. Man, I tell you what, I think they're in for a rude awakening. Number one, we realize that universities have pretty much burdened all of the students that couldn't afford to just get either a scholarship or a paid ride by their parents. We're seeing the results of the high-priced universities. I think this is going to change rapidly with the next wave of reality that sets in here. But I want to talk about, so I think these universities that everyone developing around these universities they're gambling big time. But I want to talk about jobs and employers for a minute, because one of the things that we know, okay, let's say, like you said, right? People want to live where they work, right? And we're going to realize that as more people are being called back to the office every day, right? I mean, we're almost at pre-pandemic levels where people are at least coming in a hybrid model, but they're coming into the office in one aspect or another, right? So they have to be kind of close for even a hybrid model. But when you talk about someone needing $300,000 a year in salaries to buy a house, people start scratching their heads. The employers are like, I can't afford to pay that much, right? So now all of a sudden, you're either going to see employers in these areas shut down, which you're going to take a look at, or we're going to see, them reducing their staff significantly. And so let's take a look here. In this article, and this is on CBS News Boston, it says some employers are forcing new hired college graduates to wait months to start their jobs. It says the job market for 2023 college graduates is strong. This is the part I don't understand when they say this, but some who are ready to enter the workforce have been thrown a curveball. Is it strong? Is it not strong? Let's get to the facts. Several recent grads have told WBZ TV that they were offered jobs well before graduation, only to have their start dates pushed back to next year. I mean, they're graduating. Now they got to wait months to start their job. Some graduates had planned to start this summer or fall, but have been told their company will need to wait until January. This could be like 6 months, 7 months they're asking them to wait, or even next spring. Some are offered a stipend to wait it out. Others are not. So, give me $500 to sit on the couch for mom and dad. The question is, do you wait for something, or else? And so what do you think about, tell us what you're hearing about the job market in Boston and just the metropolitan area.
So overall, the job market is relatively strong, but it's hard for people to get into it. What happens, at least from what I see, is if you are a pretty good performer at work, you graduated and you were not necessarily top of your class, right? But there's good jobs for people that are very highly specialized. The jobs for those type of people, great. We have a lot of tech startups here. We have a lot of medical. There's good entry level positions too, but the reality is there's also a lot of people looking for those entry level positions. So they're taking in my opinion, they're taking the cream of the crop people and putting them in these positions. So yes, in one hand, employment is good for some people, just like almost anything else. For some people, it's very good. For some people, it could be very bad. The more educated you are, the easier it is to get a job. But not only that, the more educated you are and the aptitude to, work and want to work and all of that stuff comes into play as well. So, that's what I've been seeing. And I think that what you said before with colleges and everything that's going on, I think that they need to open up employment a little bit more for people that maybe aren't at the top of their class or, at the top and highest performers of their class. And that would provide more opportunity for people too,
All right, Mike, before we go any further and talk about what you're hearing from buyers and sellers directly, I just want to kind of recap the jobs. And because if I go to Boston job layoffs and I search news just on Google, right at the top, it says Liberty Mutual cuts 850 employees, Biopharma layoff tracker, a whole bunch of companies here cut more staff, layoffs and higher interest rates. The tech industry in Massachusetts is course correcting. Salsify cuts over 100 jobs. Biotech layoffs 2023. Massachusetts hit hard after years of hype. Layoffs hit Massachusetts hard in March, adding to worrisome 2023 job trends. It goes on and on and on and on. Meta to cut 10,000 more jobs. How will Boston area employees be impacted? And then I want to kind of finally, as far as it relates to jobs, just this week on PasadenaNow.com, it's headlined, Local Real Estate Company Cancels Boston Development Plan, Citing Change in Economic Landscape. Pasadena-based Alexandria Real Estate Equities, Inc. has decided not to push through with a significant development project in the greater Boston area. The statement said that the site in question, identified only as industrial and self-storage, had initially been acquired with the intent of entitling the land as a life science campus. The plan was to eventually demolish the existing properties upon the expiration of current leases, but it says a shift in macroeconomic environment prompted Alexandria to reconsider the feasibility and alignment of the project with its broader mega campus strategy, according to the statement. So, I mean, as we hear this, Mike, I mean, and we see the layoffs starting to take place, and we know that Boston is not, as affordable as many hoped it would be, being able to buy a home, on an average income. What are your buyers and sellers saying now? We'll take one at a time. What are you hearing from buyers? Are you seeing canceled contracts? Are you hearing that they're just giving up? I mean, tell us what's going on with your buyers.
So right now, a lot of buyers are sitting on the sideline, not only because of interest rates, but also because of the jobs that they hold. They're seeing a lot of layoffs in the tech industry, in the biotech industry, Moderna, medical, and a lot of people are worried that they won't be able to afford, their mortgage payments, right? So, the average mortgage here for your typical home is around $6,500, $7,000 a month. I mean, it's quite a bit. So, with couple that with interest rates, people are scared to buy something. And I think that's translating in the sale prices too. And that's why we're seeing some decline in sale prices. Now, as for properties that are falling out of contract, I would say that for this time of the year, it's pretty typical from what we saw last year. There might be a little bit more, but again, this could just be the tip of the iceberg again. I could say this much on it. I mean, there's just a good metric is that from July to this month, there was a $75,000 decline in the Boston area. If you compare that to last year, there was only about a $20,000. Now, as you know, Q3 to Q4 is always less, but to have an almost $100,000 difference between last year and this year is quite significant, in my opinion. And the appreciation wasn't astronomical this year either. So I think the uncertainty and the hesitation for most people is due to the interest rates and also due to not knowing if they're going to have a job, unfortunately, come the next few months.
How about your sellers? I mean, are they still hoping for the best? I mean, are they being unreasonable with their pricing expectations?
That's a good question, to be honest with you. We were just at 2 listing appointments last week, and we had a mix of both. The one wanted a astronomical price. They put money into the house, and they want the mid-pandemic numbers. And the reality is, I don't think we're going to be there. And then we had another seller that was somewhat realistic and realizes what's going on. So I think it's a mixed bag. You're going to meet some sellers that, believe that, how this goes. They say, oh, my neighbor's house sold and it sold for X, Y, or Z. And I asked them, how long did it sell? And they said it was about 4 months ago. I looked, it was 14 months ago, and that happens often, obviously, in this business. But again, hesitation. That's the number one word, hesitation. Everybody is hesitant. They don't know what to do. But beyond being hesitant, everybody always wants to net the most amount of money, whether or not they do what's necessary, in order to do that. That's neither here nor there. But I think it's scary right now to be a seller. And it's also scary to be a buyer because there's, again, a lot of hesitation and uncertainty within the market between both parties.
What's your prediction for the next couple of months going through winter? And where do you see the spring market? You think you'll be in a better position to get higher prices, or will buyers be in a better position in the spring?
That's a good question. I think what's going to happen is as interest rates, if they go up any higher, I think it's still going to be at this like standstill. People don't know what to do. If they start to trickle down a little bit, I think that people, at least if it's a consistent trickle down, right? If it starts and then you're not seeing increases, I think that people may enter the market. But the reality is the most people that are going to be entering the market here are going to be first time buyers and seller buyers. So we're still not going to have any more inventory, right? The only thing that's actually helping our sales prices right now is the inventory. We still don't have a lot of inventory in certain markets. If there was a lot of inventory in every market, you would know that our prices would be going down, just like everywhere else. But I think that buyers should probably stay on the sidelines for a little bit longer and wait to see if the rates start to come down. If they do, I would say jump on it and get in before they come down and start to level off. Because I think when the first time buyers come out before the seller and buyers come out, I think it might be a good opportunity for people to get into the market. But again, the future is up in the air.
All right, man. Well, we thank you so much, Mike. And like I said, we'll drop all of your information in the show notes below. And we appreciate your time and we wish you the best up there in Boston, Massachusetts.
Appreciate it, buddy. Have a good day.
You too.
See you guys.
Well, I hope you guys enjoyed meeting Mike, and I'd love to know what your thoughts and comments are for the housing market in your comments below. If you like this video, you can let Mike and I know that you did by smashing that thumbs up. And guys, don't keep all this information to yourself. I always appreciate when you share the content with someone you know, as it helps us to get out important information that you're not hearing on mainstream media. And if you haven't subscribed to our channel, please consider doing so now and hit that alert bell. You'll know every time I upload content just like this. See you next time. Sachs Realty, Maryland broker number 607720, office number 443-318-4514, equal housing opportunity.